Hello, everybody. Week one is in the books in the state of Kansas, and that's what we're here to talk about on the Free Zone Saturday Breakdown. Um, you know, obviously, this is going to be a very different season. We played a Goodland team last night that I found out since then that their coaching staff was quarantined, and you're going to see weird things like that happen this year. We lost last night 42-32 to Goodland, and congratulations to the Goodland Cowboys on that win. That's a big win for their program. So we're going to kind of take a look at scores around the area. I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the games that went on last night. Once we get a little more into the season, then we'll start to take a look at district standings, league standings, seeding for the playoffs, that type of thing. And I'll also make some predictions for next week, which means I'm probably going to make a fool of myself because predictions are always a little tough anyway. And to be honest with you, there's a lot of schools here that I have not followed as closely in the last few years as I would have at one time. So we're going to kind of take a look at that too. All right, to start right off with scores, we're going to break these down by league. First of all, in the High Plains League, which is down to only 6 schools this year, okay? That's Cimarron has left the High Plains League for the GWAC. Leota, I believe, left for the Northwest Kansas League. Meade left for the Spa Iroquois League. Okay, so 3 teams left the High Plains League coming into this year. That leaves them with 6 teams. Those 6 teams are Elkhart, Lakin, Southwestern Heights, Stanton County, Syracuse, and Sublette. And they were all in action against each other last night. Our first score from the High Plains League is Elkhart 7, Lakin 49. To be real honest with you, I think there's a good chance these may be the 2 best teams in the High Plains League. I know Elkhart has graduated some from last year, but I think probably Elkhart and Lakin might be the 2 best teams in the High Plains League, and Lakin won that one 49-7. The other candidate to get into that mix would be Southwestern Heights, and Southwestern Heights last night had a 32-8 win over Stanton County. And the last game in the High Plains League last night, Syracuse 25, Sublette 0. Now, Sublette's been down recently. Stanton County's been down recently, and it looks like that trend may be continuing for those schools. Hopefully they'll get into the win column pretty quickly. But it's wins by Syracuse and Southwestern Heights were not overly surprising to me. It's not all that surprising to me that Lakin beat Elkhart, but I'm a little surprised by the margin, 49-7, although I know that Lakin's probably got pretty good athletes this year. And so those schools are ones that I'm going to be interested in watching as the season unfolds. Now, in the WAC, first of all, one game took place on Thursday, and that was Hayes against Eisenhower, Goddard Eisenhower. And Hayes won that one 19-10. On Friday, last night, the WAC took it on the chin. Liberal lost 32-42 to Goodland. Dodge City lost 42-0 to Cape and Mount Carmel. Garden City lost a close one, 21-7 to Manhattan, and Manhattan's a pretty good team. That's the 4th-ranked team in the state in 6A. And Great Bend got pretty well driven by Maize South, 56-0. Now, a couple of those are a bit of a surprise to me. I was surprised to see Great Bend get beaten that badly by Maize South. Maize South has been strong recently. They really have. But Great Bend's been fairly strong recently, too. So, obviously, graduations and maybe some other factors have had an effect on Great Bend there. We'll have to see how Great Bend responds next week. Hayes over Eisenhower, 19-10. That is a great win for Hayes. Eisenhower has been better. Now, they've been a little up and down, but Eisenhower has generally been better the last year or two. Okay? For Garden City, Manhattan, 21-7. And I haven't looked at – I've got some film of the game. I haven't had a chance to watch it yet. But, it sounds like they may well have played Manhattan fairly closely. If so, that could be a good sign for Garden City. And Liberal Goodland, again, it's too early to tell, but I think Liberal's got some work to do. There are things we've got to improve on for sure. All right, let's take a look now at the Great West Athletic Conference, the GWAC. They were all in action against each other last night too. Colby, who was the GWAC champion last year, I believe, 35-6 over Hugoton. Holcomb, 29-19 over Cimarron. Cimarron's first game in the GWAC was a loss to Holcomb. Goodland, obviously, we've already been over that one, 42-32 over Liberal. And the last GWAC game there, Scott City 17, Ulysses 0. Scott City's been pretty good the last couple of years. Ulysses has been down a little bit last year, but 17-0, that could be a good sign for Ulysses. It's always tough to tell in week one because a lot of times the offenses are not as far along as the defenses in week one. Okay. It takes a lot more time to get your offense installed and to learn what you're doing than it does your defense. And so very often in week one, your offenses are further, or your defenses, are further along than your offenses. And so 17-0, Ulysses, that could show that Ulysses played them pretty tough. It could also show maybe that both teams struggled offensively. So we'll have to kind of wait for week two and see how things go there. But, Holcomb and Cimarron 29-19. That's a potentially pretty close game. Colby 35-6 over Hugoton. Colby's was really strong last year. As a matter of fact, Colby and Scott City were definitely the class of the GWAC last year. And Colby looks like they may be pretty strong again this year. All right, now the SPIA Iroquois League. That would be Hodgman County, Satanta, Meade, South Central, Mineola, Kiowa County, South Gray, Ingalls, Spearville, and Buckland. And they were all in action against each other last night too. Now, this is an 8-man league, so this is 8-man football. First score from that group is Hodgman County 64, Satanta 0. Now, in 8-man, you have a 45-point rule at the half. So if at halftime or any time after halftime, the game becomes 45 points or more, then the game's over. Okay, so I'm sure that Hodgman County 64, Satanta 0, that would have been a halftime score. Okay, Meade 40, South Central 20. That's Meade's first game back down at 8-man in a long time, and their first game in the Iroquois League in a long time. Meade was an original member of the Iroquois League, but you're going back. They came into the High Plains League in the 80s, left to go back to the Iroquois League when they dropped to 8-man. Meade has bounced back and forth between the Iroquois League and the High Plains League as they have bounced back and forth between 11-man and 8-man. And that's happened a couple of times over the years. Meade, though, looks like they may be pretty strong in 8-man. Mineola 64, Kiowa County 18. Kiowa County is at Greensburg, of course. It's a consolidated school, but the school is in Greensburg. And Mineola 64, Kiowa County 18. That's a pretty good win for Mineola. Mineola, though, has been strong the last 2 or 3, 4 years for sure. South Gray 56 over Ingalls 6. And I'll be real honest with you. South Gray traditionally has been pretty strong, but I have not really followed either of those schools in the last few years. So I don't know what their records have been the last couple of years. I'll have to look that up. But South Gray over Ingalls 56-6 to me is not a huge surprise. Spearville 34, Buckland 22 would have been the last game in the SPA Iroquois League. Okay. Spearville has also had some real good teams in the last few years, and a 34-22 win over Buckland is actually a pretty tight margin for an 8-man game. So Buckland may be showing some signs of life there in that game. We also have a couple of 6-man scores for you. We have 2 teams right here in the immediate area that play 6-man. That's Moscow and Rolla, the remnants of the old Santa Fe Trail League. And that is, those games went Moscow 38, Fowler 12. Now, Moscow is the defending state champion in 6-man, okay? So we know they've got a pretty good squad. I don't know off the top of my head how many players they lost from last year, but they are the defending state champs. So Moscow 38, Fowler 12. And the other score from 6-man in the area, Cunningham 41, Rolla 26. So Rolla falls to Cunningham. Now, we also have some scores from out of state. In coming weeks, I will try to expand our coverage of Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle schools. Okay, today we only have a few scores for you from the Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle, but some of them could be significant. Hooker's been very strong in the last few years, and last night they fell to Sunray 41-6. Sunray is 2-0 on the year, and Hooker is 0-1. Tyrone won pretty sizable win over Turpin. Tyrone 68, Turpin 26. So that's a big win for Tyrone. Of course, Tyrone's been very strong the last 2 or 3 years. Texhoma 52-8 over Booker. Texhoma is 2-0 now, both wins over Texas schools. They beat Groover last week, and now they beat Booker last night. You know, Texhoma was down last year a little bit from where they've been, but looks like maybe Texhoma might be bouncing back strong this year. And the last game that we're going to talk about today from the Texas Panhandle is Childress 35 and Perryton 17. Perryton's been a little down in the last year or so. I don't know much about Childress and what their program's been like, but it'll be interesting to watch how those two programs go as the season progresses. Hopefully Perryton will bounce back. You know, Perryton traditionally has been a strong program, but I believe it's been kind of a 1-year lull, maybe 2 years. I've not followed them as closely as I would like to have, but Perryton I know was a little bit down last year. So, you know, hopefully we'll see the Rangers spring back there. Now, there isn't a whole lot in the way of district standings, league standings, that kind of stuff to talk about yet because it's just week 1. And so we'll start to talk about that in week 2. There were some things. I mean, obviously it was great just to see teams out playing football last night. Okay. And it was a great atmosphere for football last night. It really was. And hopefully we'll see here in the next 2 or 3 weeks that things are going to be fairly safe. However, on that note, last night Goodland's coaching staff was quarantined, so obviously there was a problem there. I found out today that I have been potentially exposed and that I will be on quarantine for about the next 10 days or so. And so shows over the next week or so may be a little iffy. There'll be kind of a decision, you know, at showtime or a little before showtime. Right now I feel just fine, but like I said, I have potentially been exposed, so I am on quarantine and we'll see how things go. Another development too if you've checked out KSCB News or anything like that, you'll realize Thursday morning, Liberal's entire cross-country team and coaching staff was quarantined for 14 days. So it's going on out there, and I'm sure there are other schools that I don't know of off the top of my head where these types of things are happening too. And so, you know, that's going to be a factor in this season in all sports, okay? And we're just going to have to kind of keep our eyes on that as the season develops. And, you know, hopefully everyone's going to be safe and everybody will be fine out of that. All right. So that brings us to predictions. Now, this is a dangerous thing, I know. Okay. But I have kind of looked it over and I'm going to tell you some things how I think they will go. First of all, I'm going to tell you, I will never make predictions on Liberal games. Okay. I coach at Liberal, and it's just not that's just not something you want to get into, is making predictions on your own games. As a matter of fact, there'll be times that I won't make many predictions in the WAC, although this week I think I will a couple. Let's start off with the High Plains League like we did with the scores. Lakin, who showed some strength against Elkhart here in week 1, 1-0, they take on Stratford, Texas. Now, Stratford is most years Stratford is a powerhouse in the Texas Panhandle. Stratford has had some really good years. Now, I'll admit, I don't know what they've done in the last couple of years, but Stratford is often deep in the playoffs in the Texas Panhandle. And for that reason alone, I'm going to go with Stratford in their game against Lakin, although, you know, it'd be nice to see Lakin really play them tight. We've got 1-0 Southwestern Heights versus 2-0 Texhoma. I think hopefully that's going to be a good game. I do think that Texhoma, they've early in the season, your Oklahoma and Texas schools often have an advantage over your Kansas schools because they've, number one, usually got about 2 more weeks of practice. They've often got a couple of scrimmages under their belt, okay? And in this case, Texhoma's already played 2 games to Heights' 1. So Texhoma is closer to mid-season form than Heights is, and for that reason, I think Texhoma probably has the best chance of winning that game, although we'll see. Next, we've got 1-0 Syracuse versus 0-1 Elkhart. I think this could be Elkhart's chance to bounce back, and I think Elkhart will probably beat Syracuse. Stanton County and Sublette. Again, both teams have been down in recent years. I think Sublette might have a little better athletes, although, again, I'm guessing because I have not followed either of those teams as closely as I would like to. But I think Sublette ought to probably pull that one out. In the WAC, we've got 1-0 Hayes versus 0-1 Great Bend. And just based purely on their performance in week 1, Hayes definitely looks like the stronger of those 2 teams. However, Great Bend and Hayes sit there, about 30 miles apart. They're not very far away from each other. That is a big natural rivalry, Hayes and Great Bend. And sometimes in those rivalry games, anything can happen. But I think if both teams stick true to form, Hayes probably ought to win that game. Garden City versus Hutchinson. 0-1 Garden City versus 1-0 Hutchinson. I think this could really be a pretty good game. Hutch has been strong over the years, but not quite as strong in the last year or two. They've had some coaching turnover, and that lack of coaching continuity often hurts a program. And I'm going to go ahead and pick Garden City in this one to beat Hutchinson. All right, let's take a look at the GWAC. We've got 1-0 Colby versus 0-1 Cimarron. I think Colby is the obvious favorite in that game. Hopefully Cimarron steps up and gives them a game. To be honest with you, I used to be the head coach at Cimarron at one time. I'd love to see Cimarron win that game. But I think Colby probably Colby probably is the logical choice in that game. Ulysses versus Hugoton. There's a rivalry game too. So again, you can kind of throw everything out there, but I think Hugoton may bounce back and get Ulysses this year. I think Hugoton has probably not lost quite as much to graduation from last year as Ulysses. We'll see how that game goes. Scott City versus Holcomb. This should be a pretty darn good game in the GWAC. They're both 1-0. They have both been very strong in recent years. Scott City made a deep run in the playoffs last year. Holcomb's won a couple of state championships in the last few years. Scott City has also, had their share of state championships over the years, and so I think this is going to be a great game. And I'm going to pick Holcomb in this game. Holcomb to beat the Beavers. And last, Goodland has Bridgeport, Nebraska. Goodland is 1-0. They're coming off a big win. I'm sure an emotional win for that program. They did not win many games last year. Bridgeport, Nebraska, I don't know anything about, to be honest with you, except their record, and I believe they are 1-0. Right now, to be honest with you, I think that one could go either way, but I'm going to pick Bridgeport, Nebraska. All right, 8-man now, the Iroquois League. Hodgman County 1-0 versus South Central 0-1. Hodgman County is probably the best team in the Iroquois League. We'll see as the season progresses, but Hodgman County ought to be able to handle South Central. Satanta 0-1 versus South Gray 1-0. Again, here I'm going to go with the traditional power, South Gray, to beat Satanta. Meade 1-0 versus Ingalls 0-1. I'm going to, really go out on a limb and continue to pick the team that's won over the team that hasn't, unfortunately, and that is Meade over Ingalls. Spearville 1-0 versus Mineola 1-0. And this is a potentially good game. Both teams have been strong in recent years. I'm not sure exactly what the record was for either team last year, but I think Mineola may have the edge here, so I'm going to pick the Wildcats to beat the Lancers. And Buckland versus Kiowa County, 2 0-1 teams. Kiowa County, of course, is at Greensburg. And I'm going to pick Kiowa County to win this game. Now, next week, I'll pick some Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle games. I'll hopefully have a little more time. You know, the first week is always a little hectic for a coach. I didn't have as much time to research some of these as I would have liked to have. And I may have nothing but time on my hands for the next 10 days, so we'll see. And that's not true. Actually, I will still be teaching. I'll just be doing it remotely. So next week, though, I'll try to have some picks for you in 6-man and in the Oklahoma and Texas Panhandle schools. Okay? Normally, our show goes live on Wednesday evenings at 8 o'clock, and hopefully it will this Wednesday as well. But, you know, with everything going on, we may be week day to day on decisions like that. So we'll just have to kind of see with that. But right now, the season started. Most of the week 1 games really went fairly true to form, fairly true to what I would have expected. And this is just going to be a weird season. We're just going to have to kind of see how this season progresses. Not only that, but you're going to begin to have teams with open dates as we come in because of what's going on. There may be teams that have to cancel games. So it's going to be a season that we're just going to have to kind of wait and take things week by week and see what's happening. But the great thing is we're playing football, which means kids are playing football. Kids are a part of a team, and a lot of kids that might not have much else to go to school for and to work for will have that to go to school for and work for, and I think that's a great thing. Other athletics are also going on, and we'll start to bring you more coverage of those, probably not on the Saturday Breakdown. The Saturday Breakdown is meant to be a football show, but probably on our Wednesday evening show in the Free Zone with Norm, we'll take a look at other sports. Of course, the Saturday Breakdown, like in the Free Zone with Norm, is brought to you by Back Home Media. Back Home Media is a great company. They've got a great stable of podcasts. They offer a variety of other services. Okay, look at the crawl down at the bottom of the screen. Go to the Back Home Media page, and you'll find out about all of the things that Back Home Media has to offer. And guys, I know that was pretty brief, and the Saturday Breakdown will probably be 20 to 30 minutes most Saturdays, but I want to thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you hopefully Wednesday evening at 8 o'clock and next Saturday. Thanks a lot, guys, and we'll talk to you later.
Well,
I don't think I thought it, that's different. I said what I said and I meant it, or lamented. Words given weight without thought in a person, the way that I talk and the way that I ought to be able to pause and to say that the fault can be placed on my arms, to display for the salt, to disgrace in his arm, pray for the day they could wait for the calm. You can't control the storm, only weather it, whether it's 5 weeks and 5 days of rain sideways, or scorched earth, search for death or water, left with all the thorns, with the petals gone, settle on the breath of autumn. If the ground fits, wear it.